Lewin's force field theory. What do you need to remember for revision? You've got to explore this concept of business change. What do we mean? Well, can you explain it? It basically just means we transition the employees, the team, or the whole business to a new state of operation. And part of it is, well, there's kind of two approaches to that. Are you reactive? You implement change after things have gone wrong. Or are you proactive? You try and anticipate future opportunities before bad things have happened. Then you need to be able to explain Lewis's force field theory. So some questions could be explain or apply how to implement it. Now we've broken that down into some steps. So the question might not say steps, but we've done that to help us answer it. You might need to define the term driving force, define the term restraining force, and identify and explain the driving and restraining forces impacting a proposed change in a case study. So, lastly, compare the driving with restraining forces. Let's look at these one at a time. Let's look at the first one. How would you explain or apply the theory? So it's easy to represent as a diagram, hard to put into words. But we start with a problem situation. The business cannot stay in the present state. It must move to a desired future. We call that a problem situation. And it's going to do that with a proposed change. So we'll either give it to you. In future sacks, you might be asked to recommend one. But what is their change? How are they going to get from here to here? Then there's going to be some driving forces. There's going to be some restraining forces. The driving forces will encourage the change. The restraining forces will prevent it from happening. Then you kind of need to recognize that change will occur when there's more driving forces or they're stronger, which we call greater weight. And the opposite, change won't occur when there's more restraining or they're stronger. And your job as a manager is to implement strategies to promote or encourage the driving forces and overcome or prevent the restraining forces. So, how could you explain that? We came up with some steps. Step 1, identify the problem situation and develop a change strategy to implement. 2, identify the driving forces and rank or weight them from 1 to 5. 3, do the same with the restraining forces. 4, we said implement a response, which we called an action plan. And all you're trying to do there is make sure your driving forces are stronger than restraining forces. And lastly, you've got to evaluate the response. Did it work? You're going to evaluate things with KPIs, which we did in chapter 10. What else? You might need to define the term driving force, define the term restraining force, and identify each in a case study. So there's a lot to remember there. So just remember what's in common. The first 3 are the same. Management is both. Employees are both. Legislation is both. It's not quite identical, but pursuit of profit and reduction of costs, which are basically the same thing, are the same as financial considerations. Then we've got competitors, globalization, technology, innovation, and societal attitudes. So there, it's a little bit easier to remember. Once you take out the commonalities, you've only got 5 driving forces to remember. And over here, that just leaves 2 restraining forces, which were time and organizational inertia. Last thing you might get asked to do is compare driving and restraining forces. How are they similar? They both determine whether you respond to change effectively, and the same force can be both a driving and restraining force. How are they different? Well, that's a bit easier. One enables change to happen, and one prevents it from occurring.